solitaire. But now that I work standing next to the dean, she's broken me of that habit. So I think it's been a big improvement in my productivity. But again, you should find things to do to reward yourself and to have jobs that are interesting. You know, a lot of my relatives, the United Auto Workers, they did the same task over and over and over again. One of my aunts, she took a transaxle assembly, put 6 bolts into it, started them, moved it on, did the next one, did that 6, 8, 10 hours a day, 5, 6 days a week for 25 years. Now it was a good job. You know, she made good money at it. And when she was done, she could go out and do as she pleased. I think for those of us that have developed ourselves, you know, it's nice to have some variety in what you need to do. In my case, working on the schedule, doing some advising of students. We got plenty of reports to write with the accreditation thing coming up, and to set things up so there's a little bit of variety and still get it all done, I think. But as look at every I think that's something I've always done. Or taken my class, obviously I think we're doing our part on emphasizing these productivity tools. I think I was very lucky to see the evolution of that technology. I went back to graduate school in 1986. As an undergraduate, I worked on the mainframe, and then as a graduate student, it was kind of the start of the era of the PC computer. And you know what? In a lot of ways, these software packages, they're the same idea that they were some time ago, 25, 30 years ago, and I suspect they're probably going to be around for a while. And as I've said to some of you before, this is what we do, right? We have data on a database, we download it into Excel and do our analysis. We write it up in Word into a formal report, and then we put it up on PowerPoint and do our presentation. We impress people, we get a lot of promotions, make a lot of money, and give it back to the college, or some of it back to the college. Okay, so again, I think to invest in your skills in using these tools is a way to create time, you know, to be more productive. And again, as I say with Excel, there's a lot more upfront effort, but you know, if you're doing some report or some analysis week after week or month after month, the time to get it into Excel so you can paste that data is some of the best you could possibly spend. And not only is it going to speed things up, it's likely to make it a lot less likely that you'd make a mistake and embarrass yourself. The other one I hadn't really thought about until I had to do, started putting this together, is Microsoft Outlook. I hadn't realized how dependent I had become on that piece of software. It has my schedule on it. I don't miss birthdays and anniversaries or holidays because they're all pre-programmed into that piece of software, and it comes up in the morning and lets me know what I need to be either thinking about or doing on that day. It's also for assigning people things to do. You give somebody an assignment, tell them it's due in a month, and go right over to Outlook, type that in, so it comes up a day or so, and you can remind your subordinate that this task is coming due, and they need to get back, make sure they're paying attention to that. It does your the Rolodex. You probably don't even know what that is, but again, and it's all now linked to your phone. So if it's something that you haven't incorporated into your activities, I think you really ought to think about it. And there's email. You guys are saying email's dead, but I'm not sure I believe that. That little phone to type messages, when it comes time for formal communications, I think you need a real keyboard with spell checker and complete sentences. How are you? The letter R. I don't think that's going to cut it in business. Maybe I'm wrong, but to have proper punctuation and all of the tools, you really need to be able to work with email, and Outlook provides that, and store the emails. Right? I think again, when there's a dispute, you need to be able to get the history of it, the record of it. That was one thing it took when email first came out. I thought of it as an informal form of conversation. As you're having a conflict, dealing with people, I still think this is true, to come and speak to them. And the words go out into the air and nobody can prove what he said or she said or whatever. And by the time things got to be formal, you were writing it out on a piece of paper, so there was a written record. What I didn't understand about email is the paper, if everybody comes to a conclusion, you can rip it up and it's gone. But email never goes away. So it's actually the more rigorous environment, even though it looks like it's informal. Thing here just a little bit on Pareto. I've already mentioned that. He was an economist, and he looked at the distribution of wealth under different systems of government, communism, socialism, capitalism, and what he found was that there were poor people and rich people in all those societies. Actually, what he found was that the distribution of wealth wasn't that different. It really didn't depend too much on the type of government. But he's gotten more publicity over this idea, the 80-20 rule. Pareto analysis, I think I point that out in my class. If anybody asks why did you choose that project, you look at them and you say, well, we perform Pareto analysis, and that'll be the end of it. They'll go, oh, great, good work, yeah, Pareto analysis. But it's a way of prioritizing your activities. And here we're saying activities that are most pressing and important, they should be classified as A activities. And B activities might be longer, long-term deliverables. And then C activities are things you got to do, but they, like the wash, like shopping, maintenance on the car, etc. So those sorts of activities, you need to standardize those and get them done. My personal way of dealing with it is On Friday, if nobody's looking in the afternoon, I go out and do my shopping, get the tires rotated on the car, and that kind of thing. And again, it's kind of a shallow level issue. It's Friday, it's the end of the week, and but that's when I do my C-level activities. And here's the diagram. We're saying, 80% of your career. He was the chair of the department. What he said to the class I was in, he said, well, the truth is 80%. He said, well, probably 90%. 90% of your success will probably be determined by, he said, well, 10%, and then he went 5%, maybe even 2% of what you do. You know, in a way, what he was saying is you have to go in there and be very consistent and deliver day in and day out, because you don't know what 2% is going to be pivotal in your career. You know, and those activities that are most important are probably quite few and far between. I'm not saying blow off the other activities, but keep this prioritization in mind. And you're never going to know, you know, what the important thing really is. And then here's Covey's time management grid. Okay? And I like this quote by Eisenhower. What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. You know? Eisenhower, the invasion of Europe, talk about a project without a deadline. It was like 2 sentences. He was assigned to invade the continent of Europe and displace the current political structure. That was his whole job description. So anyway, you can see that he had a lot of different priorities. But here, to set things up on this axis, not important, important, and urgent and not urgent. And I think the idea is here, you know, to focus on activities that are important, planning your life, setting your priorities, you know, who you're going to have relationships with, investing in yourself, and avoid getting things that are very important and make them urgent. And here, if we can avoid having non-important things become really urgent, you know. I didn't mention, I missed one of an important point that I brought to it, that none of the things that I researched when I was talking about, you know, the big picture issue. They say the number one reason for unhappiness is the length of people's commute. Okay, that if you've got a long commute, that's what determines whether people tend to be happy or not. So as a logistics person, you know, if you pick your home and to minimize the distance of your commute to work, that makes a big difference. And if you don't take care of the important, not urgent things, like getting the oil changed, you know, then you don't have a car failure, which becomes kind of an unimportant thing, but very, very urgent. So anyway, I forgot I intended to mention that, but it is in the slides. But here we want to focus on the long-term planning and make sure that the things that we're focused on don't get that urgent by eliminating the less important trivial things. What time do we have to quit? All right, we'll be over. Since many of you taken my class, we'll talk about delegation, right? Again, maybe later in your career, but I encourage you to think in terms of being the employee that you want to have working for you, right? I mean, you want somebody that will do the job, and maybe if they don't get treated completely fairly, complain a little bit, but then get back in there. And you know, as a leader, if you're going to be in a position where you need to be able to let people make their own mistakes, and then you're going to be responsible for them. And On the other hand, if you can develop good subordinates, then that's a good way to increase your productivity. My own experiences tends to be I can usually do it faster than it takes to train somebody to do it, but that's the way it goes. Again, we could talk about resources later on, but we need to wrap this up. So in summary here, I would like to suggest, when you've got this tremendous opportunity before you, Vince Lombardi and what you need to do and how you manage your time, but I hope you're not too hard on yourself, and maybe that will make it easier for you to be gracious with others. And Ben Franklin lived to be 84 years old, and he says himself that he made a lot of mistakes and learned from those mistakes. And I'm sure that what he presents as a nice, neat schedule came about later in his life. And the reason we're all here at college is to get better, and I hope you'll find time to invest in yourselves and the people around you. And I'd like to quote Warren Buffett when he spoke here at Dalton State College. He said, we've all, his spiel was kind of like, aw shucks. You know, okay, I'm really, really rich, but I'm really not that different from you. Okay, I put my pants on one leg at a time and that kind of thing. But one of the key points he made was, we've all won. You know, we've all won the birth lottery. That we would be born in this country at this time, that we're all fantastically lucky people, and to have all of this opportunity before us, which you all have, I think it's truly, truly remarkable. So I hope you use the time that you've been given to the best advantage. And good luck to you. How's that? Any questions?